1946, after moving their furniture into their new home, my father was driving from Chicago to Hope to fetch his wife. Late at night on Highway 60 outside of Sikeston, Missouri, he lost control of his car, a 1942 Buick, when the right front tire blew out on a wet road. He was thrown clear of the car but landed in or crawled into a drainage ditch dug to reclaim swampland. The ditch held 3 feet of water. When he was found after a 2-hour search, his hand was grasping a branch above the waterline. He had tried, but failed, to pull himself out. He drowned, only 28 years old, married 2 years and 8 months, only 7 months of which he had spent with Mother. This brief sketch is about all I ever really knew about my father. All my life I've been hungry to fill in the blanks, clinging eagerly to every photo or story or scrap of paper that would tell me more of the man who gave me life. I was born on my grandfather's birthday, a couple of weeks early, weighing in at a respectable 6 pounds 8 ounces on a 21-inch frame. Mother and I came home to her parents' house on Hervey Street in Hope, where I would spend the next 4 years. That old house seemed massive and mysterious to me then, and still holds deep memories today. The people of Hope raised the funds to restore it and fill it with old pictures, memorabilia, and period furniture. They call it the Clinton birthplace. It certainly is a place I associate with awakening to life, to the smells of country food, to buttermilk churns, ice cream makers, washboards, and clotheslines. To my Dick and Jane readers, my first toys, including a simple length of chain I prized above them all. To strange voices talking over our party line telephone. To my first friends, and the work my grandparents did. After a year or so, my mother decided she needed to go back to New Orleans to Charity Hospital, where she had done part of her nursing training, to learn to be a nurse anesthetist. In the old days, doctors had administered their own anesthetics, so there was a demand for this relatively new work, which would bring more prestige to her and more money for us. But it must have been hard on her leaving me. On the other hand, New Orleans was an amazing place after the war, full of young people, Dixieland music, and over-the-top haunts like the club My Oh My, where men in drag danced and sang as lovely ladies. I guess it wasn't a bad place for a beautiful young widow to move beyond her loss. While Mother was in New Orleans, I was in the care of my grandparents. They were incredibly conscientious about me. They loved me very much, sadly much better than they were able to love each other, or in my grandmother's case, to love my mother. Of course, I was blissfully unaware of all this at the time. I just knew that I was loved. Later, when I became interested in children growing up in hard circumstances and learned something of child development from Hillary's work at the Yale Child Study Center, I came to realize how fortunate I had been. For all their own demons, my grandparents and my mother always made me feel I was the most important person in the world to them. Most children will make it if they have just one person who makes them feel that way. I had 3. My grandmother, Edith Grisham Cassidy, stood just over 5 feet tall and weighed about 180 pounds. Mama was bright, intense, and aggressive, and had obviously been pretty once. She had a great laugh, but she was also full of anger and disappointment, an obsession she only dimly understood. She took it all out in raging tirades against my grandfather and my mother, both before and after I was born, though I was shielded from most of them. She had been a good student and ambitious, so after high school she took a correspondence course in nursing from the Chicago School of Nursing. By the time I was a toddler, she was a private duty nurse for a man not far from our house on Hervey Street. I can still remember running down the sidewalk to meet her when she came home from work. I adored my grandfather, the first male influence in my life, and always felt pride that I was born on his birthday. James Eldridge Cassidy was a slight man, about 5'8", but in those years still strong and handsome. I always thought he resembled the actor Randolph Scott. My grandfather was an incredibly kind and generous man. During the Depression, when nobody had any money, he would invite boys to ride the ice truck with him just to get them off the street. They earned 25 cents a day. When I was living with him, my grandfather had 2 jobs that I really loved. He ran a little grocery store, and he supplemented his income by working as a night watchman at a sawmill. I loved spending the night with Papa at the sawmill. We would take a paper bag with sandwiches for supper, and I would sleep in the back seat of the car. And on clear, starlit nights, I would climb in the sawdust piles, taking in the magical smells of fresh-cut timber and sawdust. My grandfather loved working there, too. It got him.